Hello everybody, welcome to my analysis of the conference call of MicroStrategy and the slides attached to that call. This analysis is for Q4 2024 that was reported yesterday, February 5, 2025 is when this was reported. The call was great. I'm very happy to what I see. What's not to love? What's not to love is the title of this video. Because I see the internet crowd being very unreasonable, being very disappointed, saying this was the worst call. And I can't overlook the main news, which is the raise of the outlook. The outlook was raised to 15% BTC yield for full year 2025. That's what he's guiding. Saylor's taking a risk in guiding so high compared to the prior guidance. The prior guidance was 6 to 10%. You can see it here. This was in November of 2024. He had guided 6 to 10%. He's now guiding 15%. So the new guide is between 150% and 50% increase compared to the prior guide. This is a very big deal in my opinion. I cover all sorts of stock on this channel, and I can tell you that increases in outlook like that don't happen very often. Even for a stock like Nvidia, you don't get a 150% increase in your outlook. This is very bullish, and just this piece of information is enough to make me happy with the call and with the report. But we got more. We got a new KPI, the BTC dollar gain KPI, because I suppose Wall Street has been confused and has been debating what the Bitcoin yield is. The Bitcoin dollar KPI, Bitcoin dollar gain, is a way to communicate to Wall Street in the form of billions of dollars. And it's not earnings, it's not net income, it's a BTC dollar gain. And so Saylor is setting up for the company to be valued or looked at as a ratio of price to BTC dollar gain. And so when he translates the Bitcoin yield into a gain, and feel free to look at the calculation right here of how this is done, when he translates the Bitcoin yield to a gain, you see that he's guiding 10 billion BTC gain, right? Annual BTC dollar gain target for 2025 of 10 billion. He's guiding that for 2025. And right now, the stock being slightly down, the market cap is 82.7 billion. So the price to gain, the price to BTC gain, the price to forward BTC gain is 8, right? And let's ask ourselves, do we think that's a fair ratio, a fair price multiple, given that he's guiding a 10 billion gain? And that guide right there is 50% higher than what was guided prior in November of 2024 in Q3. And I think it's still a sandbag. If you saw my model, my base case is still for an increase of that. And who knows what we're going to get in Q1. He's going to update that BTC gain every quarter, as companies often do. Companies often set up for a beat, and so this is new finance in the making, the making of new metrics for the Bitcoin world. And I think this is very relevant. And when you can look at trailing 12 months, we're trading at what? We're trading at a 6 times price to BTC gain for a TTM for a trailing 12 months, because they achieved last year, 2024, they achieved 13 billion in BTC dollar gain. 2024 was an exceptional year for MicroStrategy, so I'm very happy to see that new KPI being introduced. Now, moving on to the actual ATM, talking about the ATM, a few things here. So first of all, you can see that Q4 2024 was outstanding as far as adding Bitcoin, and that was mostly because of the ATM, mostly because of the selling a $1 bill for $2, the harvesting of the price to ATM, capturing the difference, selling a dollar for $2, as Saylor has eloquently said multiple times. I've tried to make that demonstration before in prior entire videos of how it works, why dilution is actually good, why dilution allows you to capture the difference in the price to NAV. But we got the clear number. We have 4.3 billion of ATM remaining. So if it doesn't overdo it, that could be the entire Q1. The entire Q1 could be sold via ATM and then it'd be out, and then he would need to perhaps do a new ATM plan during the Q1 report, at the Q1 report. A lot of people are also disappointed that we didn't see fair value accounting being adopted, and they've guided that they will adopt fair value accounting in Q1 when it's required by law, by the way. So this type of headline, which you still see today, which I guess you could attribute for the stock being down, MicroStrategy swings to wider than expected loss, and some websites show it as like minus 5,000% or something like that. These headlines, you can expect them to either be gone, or I doubt it, but they could potentially be positive for Q1 if we have a big beat. And so it could be something like MicroStrategy, well, I guess strategy, we're going to call it strategy, stuns market with an enormous beat when they recognize the earnings. Although the media tends to have a negative slant in the way they phrase things, and if there's anything to nitpick on, they'll find it. But that's not the point. The point is, this is all about Q1, and again, I realize that some people are upset, and maybe someone's upset because they wrote short options and they own short-term out-of-the-money options on this. But Saylor has said it multiple times. He works for the common stockholder. He maximizes the return for the common stockholder, not for the short-term options holder or someone who is on a leverage position. And so. Again, that doesn't bother me. He said it before. The common is who he works for. The common holder is who he works for. Let's look at the ATM. I often see on Twitter people wondering, oh, he's tapping the ATM. He's tapping the ATM. Well, that worry, I would say, or criticism, but it's not a bad criticism, because it's a criticism on how the Bitcoin yield is earned. Anyways, you can see he was doing the ATM all weeks except this last week because of a blackout period where it did 0%. But even at the turn of a new year, he did a little bit of ATM with 100 million. So the average, on average, over the past quarter, 2.9% of the volume has been the issuance of new shares. So this is an example of him monetizing the volume via the ATM, via the issuance of new shares. It pays off to have such a volatile, such an active market for the shares. Moving on to the leverage. So the leverage is the main bear argument. People say, oh, this is going to end badly because he borrows a bunch of money. Well, two things. There's two aspects to that. One of them is, of course, the interest rates that you pay. Don't forget, companies borrow money very differently, right? It's not like a mortgage you have to pay every month, right? They borrow debt, and the debt matures, and when the debt matures, you owe a lump sum payment, which very oftentimes companies just repay with new debt. They roll it over, as we call it. The debt is rolled over, and it's rare that companies pay off their debt. They usually carry the debt for decades because they just roll it over with new debt. New debt is issued to repay the old debt. That's often how it works. And so it's a matter of ratio. How much debt do you have in your capital structure relative to your market cap, and in the case of MicroStrategy, relative to Bitcoin. And you can see that with the debt and the preferred, only 8% of the market cap is debt. So compare this to, say, someone owning a house. You own a $500,000 house. If you only have 8% left of the value of that house in your mortgage, is this a precarious situation? And the answer to that is absolutely not. And in the case of MicroStrategy, of course, there's the Bitcoin value, which is the highly sellable collateral. But then again, the equity is also highly sellable, as witnessed with the ATM. So I'm not even sure that's the right ratio to look at. I actually don't think it's the right ratio to look at. I think to market cap is the right ratio to look at, because you can sell your shares. It's the shares are in again, very high demand because of the volume. But let's assume the shares were in very low demand. Let's assume there's some sort of a market event, market crisis. Nobody buys shares anymore. Well, guess what? Bitcoin is even more liquid of a collateral. You can do it on the weekend, and Bitcoin is 15% debt, and the preferred is 15% of a Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Another way to put it, so first of all, I want to point out a lot of the note has nearly zero interest rate, except the 2032, which has a little bit, but otherwise it's nearly zero interest rate. I mean, 2.25% in today's interest rate environment sure looks like a near zero, but he issued, of course, the $500+ million of ATM, or not of ATM, sorry, of preferred here. So the preferred, the new 730 million of preferred, that new preferred right there. Okay, so they can cover 750 years of strike dividend with the current Bitcoin that they hold, or 100 years if Bitcoin were to decline by 75%. In other words, in Saylor's mind, in my view, this is in his mind, and the point that I think he's trying to make in this slide is that it's tough to find preferred that are less risky than this, because typically preferred are not invested in Bitcoin. Typically, they're invested in some business endeavor, which may or may not work, and in this case it's literally turned into Bitcoin. And so he's making the point that a lot of demand will exist for that 8% yield at a Bitcoin backed security level, the security of the Bitcoin backing. And so again, this is all new information, which I find very helpful, which makes me pleased. Once again, what's not to love in that call? Moving on, of course, and I don't want to, point out too much the volatility. Of course, the stock is much more volatile than everything else, and this is why the shares are gobbled up. This is why the ATM works. This is why there's a lot of interest in this stock, because a lot of people write options on the stock, and they use MicroStrategy as quote-unquote rocket fuel or racing fuel. They use it as racing fuel in their options engine, their trading engine. Hedge funds, money managers, they do options. It's a way to earn more yield, and you gotta have a asset, a stock on which, I don't know, you say take the options wheel strategy on which to do the wheel. Well, you gotta have a stock to do it. And is there any better stock to do it than MicroStrategy right now? Well, the point that Saylor is making is that there's no better stock, at least in the S&P 500. There's actually better stocks, but those better stocks are derivatives of MicroStrategy, because you have assets that are like 2x MicroStrategy, and you can do the options wheel on that, and it gets even crazier. So that's the whole idea of volatility and selling the volatility. And of course, the volatility that he's trying to promote is that the equity is 1.5 Bitcoin, 1.5x Bitcoin, roughly the volatility. Convertible debt is a little less volatile than Bitcoin. Strike is even less volatile than convertible debt, and then Bitcoin, and then the equity, and then the fixed coupon. So he mentioned that in the call. MicroStrategy used to have a fixed coupon. They retired it. They don't have any issue issuing another fixed coupon debt. So your regular bond, issuing a regular corporate debt, regular bond, that might be something on the roadmap for them, again, for MicroStrategy. So total, if you think of this company as a Bitcoin bank or Bitcoin treasury company, more like a Wall Street type bank, they see themselves as their job of issuing financial instruments. And they issue 3 financial instruments right now: the equity, the convertible debt, and the preferred. And they may issue 4 financial instruments in the future if they add the bonds, the regular bonds. And of course, how many more financial instruments can they issue? Well, probably a bunch, right? There's probably way more financial instruments that they could issue, especially if you get into the nitty-gritty of corporate finance. And so I'm pleased to see that. I was pleased to know that they are thinking about probably doing just a simple bond at some point. And let me conclude this video with the last but not least. Of course, they launched a new brand. I did an entire video about the new brand. And I want to say, I think it's catching on. I see a lot of positivity about the new brand. I see a lot of people tweeting about, oh, it's going to be Strategy Bank, Strategy Bitcoin Bank. Anyways, no, it's Strategy for now. We don't really know. But the point is, this brand is resonating. And if you wanted to buy anything from the store, or at least anything cool from the store, I mean, even the pens are sold out. Even the office pen are sold out. Like how many pens did the community buy? Anyways, think about the price to NAV on an orange shirt, right? Is that a 10x price to NAV on this? So the point is, yep, it's sold out. So there's a lot of people loving this brand. And again, this is not a stock like the other. This is a stock that is loved. And just like Tesla has a merch store, I guess the new merch store for Bitcoin comes from MicroStrategy, and I think this is a wise thing to do, and exploiting that notoriety is now part of a lot of stocks stories, right? And so this is just the way it works. Again, side business, but probably a good thing to do over a long run. Brand building takes a very long time. Anyways, this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.